Shalom, shalom. This week's Parsha is Parshat Vayeishev, and I want to take a few minutes to talk about something that I think is so applicable to people and what we go through today, especially Jewish people and the Jewish nation, but it really applies all over. And the reason why I discuss it is because I specifically have been quite distraught for a long time because, well, now we'll start with the more heinous one that we know with Hamas and the Palestinians that are spreading outright lies about our nation, and people believe it. Lots of people believe it. Seemingly intelligent people believe it, and it's very harmful. The possible outcomes of the lies that are being told and swallowed by mass amounts of people, the potential for harm not only to our nation but to the entire world is devastating. And I want to look at it when we look in our Parshat Vayeishev at the story of Yosef. How he went through a couple of ordeals that really pertain and that really have, I think, a glimmer of hope for us at the end. And so let's start with the story that everybody knows, the famous story of Yosef and his brothers who were extremely jealous of him. He was his father's favorite. His father made him ketonet pasim, this coat, very special overcoat, and they hated him. They were jealous. He had the dreams. They were even more jealous. Then his father had told him to go check on the brothers when they were shepherding the sheep out in what should have been Shechem, but really was Dotan. And when he finally caught up with them and found them, they conspired to kill him. They wanted him dead. Reuben talked him out of it. They threw him in a pit. Reuben was going to try and retrieve him later, but he couldn't because it was too late. He was already sold to the Yishmaelim, who then sold him on. And as we know, he eventually ended up in Egypt. Now, when the brothers conspired to kill him, they said what they were going to do is they would slaughter an animal, dip the coat that they stripped Yosef naked and threw him in the pit. They took that coat and they dipped it in the blood and they sent it to their father, and the assumption was that Yosef was torn apart and killed viciously by an animal. And we're told that Yaakov mourned excessively for Yosef. Now, that says that all of the children, the daughters and sons, no doubtedly granddaughters and grandsons, tried really hard to comfort Yaakov, but they couldn't do it. He was unconsolable. And we're told even throughout the stories in the Parshiot with all these pertaining to the incident, that they had deep regret for this. The brothers at the time, they hated, they were jealous, and they really wanted to kill him. But they were really thinking through these drastic emotions that they were having at the moment, and had they understood the consequences of their actions, many consequences, but specifically I'm talking about the pain that it caused for their father and the difficulties it put in the family, that it divided the family further, as we see that Yehuda had to go down and leave the family, couldn't even be with his brothers anymore. Things got really difficult. There was so much family issues because of this, and it's easy to see why. And all of this from, starting from a lie that came because brother being hateful and jealous of another brother. Now, unfortunately, the Jewish people who should be above these things are not, and we have times that we do things brother against brother that are wrong, but we're so emotional, and we can't put ourselves aside from the emotion to use our brain for a minute and say, is this harmful to our nation? that we do things that horribly are regretful and cause way bigger problems to our nation. And we're guilty of this. We're guilty of this. But even more so when we become guilty of this, and we don't, this is not following with what God wants, not following in God's ways, and we cause ourselves bigger problems, external problems and issues. And the same thing happened with the brothers and with Yosef. And Yosef, he got first sold to the house of Potiphar, which was not so bad for him, as we see, because he had been, God blessed his efforts, and he had made everything blossom, and he made a lot of money and success for Potiphar. But unfortunately for him, he was a really good-looking guy, and Potiphar's wife set her eyes on him, and she was relentless. She was relentless in chasing after him, and he never gave in to her advances. And we know that fateful day when they were alone, and she grabbed a hold of him, and he just fled, and she had his coat and accused him because she wasn't successful, and she was angry and humiliated, and then she screamed rape and made up a whole story. Again, lies against this Yosef Hatzadik, a righteous person, did nothing. This is complete opposite from what he did, because he said, I can't do this to my master who's been so good to me. I can't do this evil thing in the eyes of God. But she had no qualms about lying about it, and he ended up in jail. Okay, so first, poor Yosef is thrown screaming naked into a pit, sold down into slavery. He finally gets some sort of comfy little job, and there he has to get accused of rape and thrown into prison. But again, he always stayed righteous. He always stayed connected. He never lost his moral compass. He did what was right, and he tried his hardest, and so God blessed his effort. He blessed his efforts in the prison also. And you see, again, in the prison, he was put in charge of everything, so he was able to climb the rungs. I'm sure it was still no picnic, but he was there, and he was able to advance to a high position there in charge of all the prisoners. Lucky him. And then you see when the prisoners came, the wine, the cupbearer, and the baker, when they had their nightmares and at night their dreams, and they were perturbed the next morning, Yosef, he was a caring individual. He goes, why are you so downtrodden today, guys? What's wrong with you? He kept this care for humankind, that these are prisoners, but it bothered him that he saw that they were distraught, and he tried to fix it, and he was able to, as he said, the dreams are in the hands of God, and he interpreted the dreams, and he got them out. And eventually, because of that, he was able to go. When Paro had a dream and couldn't be interpreted, they remembered him, and they called upon him eventually. And as we know, he became second to the king, high position. And this was a difficult journey, no doubt, with so many dark moments, in a pit, yelling and screaming for his life, sold as a slave, humiliated. Then he was again humiliated, charged with rape, and thrown into a prison. He was gone for 13 years in servitude, no family, no loved ones, just alone and isolated and beholden to these foreign people with foreign ideas, with not the moral compass that Yosef was attuned to, and just a totally different way of life. And must have been lonely and depressing and really hard journey for him. And all of this based on lies. First lies from his own brother, then lies from Potiphar's wife. And this is what our nation going through now. It's very scary to me that we go through lies and that people believe the lies. And it puts us sometimes in a dark and scary place. But what gives me hope and what gives me, you know, a sense of motivation to stay good and to be good and not to fall into these lies and bad tactics, and to keep on going in the way of God, of caring for people, of helping people, of doing good. And our IDF also, I mean, you'd think that they wouldn't, but they try so hard. The dignity for human life, even of the enemy, and letting them go and letting in, you know, just doing the best they can to minimize casualties and all this. Because when we stay in the path of God, eventually God has a plan. And yes, we suffer, and yes, we're in dark places, and yes, it's difficulty, and it's for many years, and it seems like there's no out. But there's a bigger plan. There's a redemption waiting. And that if we just stay good and true, God will be with us and will continue to have success even in these dark, scary moments. That God willing, that God has helped us so much so far in this war, in defeating, killing a lot of terrorists and defeating a lot of bad, and that He should continue to help us in this war of good against evil, to destroy people who lie, murder, rape, brutalize, dismember people. This should not be something that ever exists. And I believe if we stay good and true, that we will be victorious, and the lies will dissipate into nothinghood and be told in the end of days, as be shown in the light that it is. It's just a bunch of empty lies from a bunch of pathetic, evil people. So let us keep on fighting the good fight, incur the blessing of God, and not worry so much. Just do what we have to do. And hopefully the miracles, Hanukkah's around the corner, they will come. They will come. God bless you all. Shabbat Shalom.